Hello everyone, this is my learning interaction number 2 for Family 445, and the best way that I thought I would do this presentation today was to just pick some of the questions that we've been given over the last couple weeks, specifically the ones that provoked the most thought from me, and to share my responses. So I had five questions that really stood out to me that I wanted to talk about for this video. The first one says, component display theory contains simple principles related to teaching. If the principles are powerful and understood and utilized, what is one specific principle you can take from this theory and weave into your lesson plan to improve your teaching effectiveness? So if you remember, this was from chapter 4 about sharing information as opposed to sharing examples of the principles. And this really stood out to me because I think that it's important to balance between information and examples, because while I've been working on my lesson plan, something that was mentioned to me by my partner and from our teacher was that my writing was too technical and it wasn't necessarily geared for a blog. And so as I tried to adjust that to make it more audience friendly, I guess it made me think of ways that I could use more examples to show the principles or to change the language I was using to illustrate that better. It also made me think to use videos more, because I might not have personal examples for some of the topics that I do using. So that was something that I was thinking about, was how to reach out to a larger audience through examples in similar language. The second question was, along with component display theory, Duncan and Goddard summarized other effective instructional principles that have been taught by David Merrill. Share one principle that was taught in the book that you especially appreciate and will implement in your family life. So I really liked Merrill's principles, and we actually used this for our assessment that we'll be using on our blog. So two of Merrill's principles that really stood out to me were, one, there needs to be a balance between sharing already known information and then building off of that to establish new information when you're teaching principles to people. And I think that this is important and essential, because the more connections that readers and audience members make to the new information with their previous knowledge, the more they'll be able to remember it, and it'll make a bigger impression on them. The second principle of Merrill's that really stood out to me was that there should be opportunities to practice new skills. And this is really difficult to do on a blog. So some of the things that I tried to do in our blog post was to create journal prompts or questions, ways that they could simulate practicing. That's something that I'd still like to work on, or would like your guys' thoughts on how we can implement how to practice skills when using an online curriculum. So I think that's something that would really help, but that's difficult to do. The third question was, most likely you've taught in some setting before, whether it be through educational training, as a missionary, in a church setting, or some other capacity. What have you learned about involving others in discussion? So I think that discussion is really vital in order to help people to change. And I think that principles and concepts are important and that they're very foundational, but when people share stories about their own experiences, about what worked, what didn't work, what they tried, I think that's when other class members gain perspective and influence on things that they can do. And like I mentioned above, the more connections that people make, the more they'll be impressed and the more they'll remember those things. Especially when working with families, there needs to be a human element in a real life example, not just information poured out on people. They need to hear stories, they need to hear experiences, and I think that's mostly obtained through discussion. So I think discussion is really vital. That's what I've learned in the most successful classes I've been a part of. Question 4 that I really liked was what could you do to improve the use of personal narratives or stories in your teaching? This is something that I've also struggled with or had a challenge trying to work through in writing blog posts for lessons, is that, one, I can't ask our audience for stories or experiences that they've had and have that be integrated into the lesson. It can be a part of it in some way if people comment, but ultimately it's not integrated into the lesson. And because we picked a topic that is a little bit higher than our knowledge level, it takes a lot of research to come up with. So I might not always have personal stories or narratives. So something that we've been trying to do is to find YouTube videos that explain stories or give examples through people who have actually experienced these things that we're writing about. And I think that helps to subsidize some of the lack of having face-to-face or interaction. Plus, I think that it helps have a different media than just reading the blog. The last question I wanted to go over that I've been thinking about over the last couple weeks was, why do family life educators need to be sensitive to differences that may exist within individuals and families? And this is a thought that I've had running through my mind over and over again, is that I and we as family life educators should not take on the role of therapists. And this has just been going over and over and over again in my mind. And one reason is because it seems like it can be really easy, and it could be a big problem for family life educators to fit into that role when they're not necessarily qualified or in the position to be giving that kind of help. So one reason that I think it's important to recognize differences between families and individuals is because not every solution is going to fit every problem. So what may be a good principle or application for one family may be a terrible idea for another family. And really, that's not our judgment call to make. So we need to be aware of differences between audience members. Ultimately, family life educators help families understand concepts and principles and to generate general ideas. But then it's ultimately up to the family to come up with applications for that, and a therapist, if they have one, on how to apply that knowledge specifically to their own family and their own lives. That's not the role of family life educator. We're educators, not therapists. So those are some of my thoughts that I've had over the last couple weeks as we've been going through our classwork, and I hope that this was helpful to you guys, and I'm excited to listen to your videos. Thanks for watching.